The abandoned Commander Lieutenant Commander Zara Winters watched in disbelief as the last of the Terran Defense Fleet's ships vanished into hyperspace. The massive dreadnought Prometheus that had been her home for 3 years was gone, leaving nothing but empty space and the bitter taste of betrayal. She stood alone on the observation deck of Nexus Station, her hands pressed against the cold viewport, trying to process what had just happened. The evacuation order had come suddenly. Enemy forces were approaching, and all Terran ships were to retreat immediately to the inner colonies. But somehow, in the chaos of departure, she had been left behind. Her own crew, her own ship, had abandoned her without a second thought. "Ma'am?" The voice belonged to Chief Petty Officer Marcus Kane, one of the few humans still stationed on Nexus. "The station commander wants to see you." Zara turned away from the viewport, her reflection showing the shock still etched on her face. She was a decorated officer, veteran of 12 campaigns against the Krex Empire. She had saved countless lives, earned the respect of her peers, and now she was stranded on a remote outpost with no way home. The station commander, a grizzled veteran named Captain Torres, was waiting in his office. His expression was grim as he gestured for her to sit. "I'm sorry, Commander. I tried to contact your fleet, but they're maintaining communication silence." "How many ships made it out?" Zara asked, though she dreaded the answer. "All of them. Every single Terran vessel in the sector." Torres paused, studying her face. "Except for one problem. They left behind their most valuable asset." "What asset?" "You." The words hit harder than she expected. For years she had prided herself on being indispensable, on being the officer others looked to in crisis. Now she felt like discarded equipment, forgotten in the rush to save more important things. "The Kree fleet will be here in 18 hours, Torres continued. "We have defensive capabilities, but against a full battle group." He shrugged helplessly. Zara stood up, her mind already working through possibilities. "How many civilians are on this station?" 47,000. Families, researchers, traders. Most of them have nowhere else to go. She walked to the window overlooking the station's central hub. Below, she could see the daily life of the station continuing. People unaware that death was racing toward them through the void. Children played in the recreation areas while their parents worked to maintain this fragile outpost of human civilization. "What defenses do we have?" she asked. "Minimal. A few automated turrets, some patrol craft, nothing that could stop a Krix battle group." Zara felt something change inside her. The abandonment, the betrayal, the fear. All of it crystallized into something harder, more determined. Her fleet might have left her behind, but these people were counting on her now, and she had never failed the people counting on her. "Then we'll have to be creative," she said, turning back to Torres with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Because I'm not letting them down. The impossible plan." The emergency meeting in Nexus Station's command center drew an unlikely group. Captain Torres sat at the head of the table, while Zara studied the holographic display showing the incoming Krix fleet. Around them sat the station's department heads, civilian leaders, and anyone else who might contribute to their desperate situation. 12 ships, announced Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the station's chief scientist. 3 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, and 3 support vessels. They'll arrive in 16 hours. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the mathematics of their situation. Nexus Station had never been designed as a fortress. It was a research and trade hub built for peaceful purposes in what had been considered safe space. "Our patrol craft wouldn't last 5 minutes against one of their destroyers," muttered Security Chief Williams, shaking his head. "We should evacuate what we can and scuttle the station." "No." Zara's voice cut through the despair like a blade. "We're not running. We're not giving up. And we're definitely not letting the Krix have this station." Williams stared at her. "Commander, with respect, you're talking about fighting off a battle group with maintenance pods and cargo haulers." "Exactly." Zara's smile was predatory. They're expecting to find a defenseless research station. Instead, they're going to find 47,000 humans who refuse to surrender. She activated the holographic display, manipulating it to show the station's structure. Dr. Tanaka, what's our primary export? The scientist looked confused. Quantum resonance crystals. We process them for use in faster-than-light communications. And what happens when you overload a quantum resonance crystal? Understanding dawned in Tanaka's eyes. The energy release is significant. But, Commander, using them as weapons would be incredibly dangerous. The radiation alone could kill everyone on the station. Not if we don't detonate them here. Zara began outlining her plan, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. We load every cargo hauler, every maintenance pod, every piece of junk that can fly with overloaded crystals. When the Crix fleet arrives, they'll find what appears to be a panicked evacuation. A trap, Torres breathed, beginning to understand. The oldest trick in human history. We look weak, desperate, scattered. They'll move in close to prevent our escape, and then we detonate every single crystal simultaneously. The room erupted in discussion. Some called it brilliant, others called it suicide. But as the debate continued, something remarkable happened. The despair that had filled the room began to transform into determination. "It's insane," said Chief Engineer Rodriguez. "The timing would have to be perfect. One mistake, and we're all dead." "We're already dead if we do nothing," Zara replied. "At least this way we take them with us." Dr. Tanaka was running calculations on her tablet. "If we use the station's entire crystal reserve, the explosion would be visible from 3 star systems away. But, Commander, coordinating that many vessels, ensuring they all detonate simultaneously." That's where human ingenuity comes in. Zara turned to face the room. "Every person on this station has skills the Crix don't expect. Our cargo pilots know these shipping lanes better than anyone. Our engineers can modify anything to explode. Our communications specialists can coordinate a symphony of destruction." She paused, looking each person in the eye. "The Crix think humans are weak because we don't have their technology, their natural armor, their warrior culture. But they've never faced humans who have nothing left to lose and everything to protect." The vote was unanimous. Nexus Station would fight. The human spirit. The next 14 hours transformed Nexus Station from a peaceful research outpost into a hive of desperate activity. In the cargo bays, teams of engineers worked around the clock, converting civilian vessels into improvised weapons. The air hummed with the sound of welding torches and the constant chatter of technical discussions. Zara found herself in the thick of it, moving from team to team, solving problems and offering encouragement. She had discarded her formal uniform. For work clothes, her hands now stained with grease and crystal dust. This wasn't the sterile warfare of ship-to-ship combat she was used to. This was raw, improvised, human. "Commander," Chief Rodriguez called out from beneath a cargo hauler. "We've got a problem with the Lucky Strike. Her captain says the crystal load is too heavy for her engines." Zara crawled under the ship to join Rodriguez. The Lucky Strike was a 30-year-old freight hauler, her hull patched with mismatched plates, and her engines held together by prayer and stubbornness. Her captain, a weather-beaten woman named Kate Morrison, stood nearby with her arms crossed. "I've been flying this bucket for 20 years, Morrison said. "She's tough, but she's not a warship. Load her with that many crystals and she'll tear herself apart before we reach the target zone." "What if we redistribute the load?" Zara suggested. "Split it between more vessels?" "We're already using every ship that can fly," Rodriguez replied. "Even the maintenance pods are loaded to capacity." Zara stared at the Lucky Strike, thinking. The ship represented everything about human space travel. Improvised, patched together, held together by determination rather than perfect engineering. And that gave her an idea. "What if she doesn't need to reach the target zone intact?" Zara asked. "What if falling apart is part of the plan?" Morrison's eyes widened. You want to use her as a fragmentation bomb? Exactly. Load her with crystals and debris. When she breaks apart, she'll scatter the charges across a wider area. The Crick's shields can stop directed energy weapons, but they're not designed for debris fields. The plan evolved rapidly. The Lucky Strike would be the centerpiece of their attack, designed to break apart and create a cloud of explosive debris. Other ships would use the confusion to deliver their charges directly to the Crick's vessels. As the work continued, something remarkable happened. The artificial barriers between military and civilian, human and alien residents began to break down. The station's small population of non-human traders and diplomats had chosen to stay and fight alongside the humans. A family of Centauri merchants used their ship's superior sensors to help coordinate the attack. An elderly vegan philosopher offered to pilot one of the explosive vessels, saying it would be an honor to die defending innocent lives. But it was the humans who amazed Zara most. They approached the impossible task with a combination of grim, determination, and dark humor that she recognized as uniquely human. Engineers jury-rigged solutions that shouldn't work, but did. Pilots volunteered for suicide missions with casual bravery. Civilians took on military roles without question or complaint. "You know what the Cricks don't understand about humans?" Dr. Tanaka said as they watched a group of teenagers help load crystal charges. "They think desperation makes us weak, but desperation is what makes us dangerous." Zara nodded, watching a maintenance crew modify a luxury yacht into a guided missile. They've spent so long conquering civilized species that they've forgotten what happens when you corner something wild. The final hour before the Crick's arrival found Nexus Station eerily quiet. The frantic activity had given way to tense waiting. Pilots sat in their cockpits, hands steady on controls, despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. Engineers made final checks on systems that had never been designed for warfare. Families said goodbye to each other, knowing that many would not survive the next few hours. Zara stood in the command center, watching the sensor displays. The Crick's fleet was right on schedule, approaching with the arrogant confidence of predators, who had never faced serious resistance. "All vessels report ready," Torres announced quietly. Zara activated the communication system. "This is Commander Winters to all ships. In a few minutes, we're going to show the Crick's Empire what happens when you threaten human families. We're going to teach them that humans don't just fight to win. We fight to protect what matters most." Idar paused, looking around the command center at the faces of people who had become her new crew. "Today, we're not just defending a station. We're defending the idea that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they stand together. Let's make sure the galaxy remembers what happened here." The Battle of Nexus Station. The Crick's fleet emerged from hyperspace with the casual arrogance of predators approaching helpless prey. Their ships were sleek, deadly, and utterly confident in their technological superiority. Admiral Kethvar, commanding, from the bridge of the heavy cruiser Death's Edge, surveyed the tactical display with satisfaction. "A research station," he growled to his subordinates. "They flee like scared insects." The sensor operator looked up from his console. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple small vessels departing the station. They appear to be civilian craft." "Evacuating, as expected." Kethavar's mandibles clicked in what passed for Crick's laughter. "Let them run. We'll hunt them down after we secure the station." But something about the evacuation bothered him. The ships were moving in too organized a pattern, too coordinated for panicked civilians. And they seemed to be positioning themselves around his fleet rather than fleeing towards safe space. In the command center of Nexus Station, Zara watched the tactical display with predatory focus. The Crick's ships were moving exactly as she had predicted, spreading out to surround the fleeing civilian vessels. They wanted to prevent any escape, to capture as many humans as possible for questioning and intimidation. "Distance to target?" she asked calmly. 15,000 kilometers and closing," Torres replied. "The Cricks are moving into optimal position." Zara activated her communication array. "All ships, This is Nexus Command. Execute Phoenix Protocol in 30 seconds. Remember, we only get one chance at this. Across the improvised fleet, pilots gripped their controls tighter. Kate Morrison, alone in the Lucky Strike, felt her ship straining under the massive crystal. Load. The ancient freighter was already beginning to vibrate as her overloaded engines pushed her toward the Crix formation. 15 seconds, Zara announced. The Crix fleet had nearly completed their encirclement. Admiral Kethvar was already planning the interrogation of the human commander when his sensor operator suddenly screamed a warning. "Sir! Energy readings are spiking across the human fleet. Those aren't evacuation ships, they're bombs!" But it was too late. "Execute!" Zara commanded. Across the battlefield, dozens of human vessels simultaneously detonated their crystal charges. The Lucky Strike was the first to go, her ancient hull finally giving way to the massive energies contained within. But instead of a single explosion, she broke apart in a carefully choreographed sequence, scattering her deadly cargo across space in a pattern that engulfed two Crix destroyers. The quantum crystals detonated like a chain of stars being born. The energy release was so intense that it temporarily blinded sensors across both fleets. When the light faded, 3 Crix ships had been completely destroyed, and 2 more were drifting, their hulls cracked and venting atmosphere. But the battle was far from over. The surviving Crix ships, enraged by the ambush, began returning fire, with everything they had. The space around Nexus Station became a hellscape of energy beams and exploding debris. "Damage report," Zara called out as the station shuddered under enemy fire. "Hull breaches on levels 7 and 12, Torres reported. "We've lost main power to the outer ring." Through the chaos, individual acts of heroism emerged. The Centauri merchant family, flying their censorship through the battlefield, painted targets for the remaining human vessels. An elderly engineer, named Phillips, kept the station's weapons online despite being trapped in a compartment that was slowly venting atmosphere. A teenage pilot named Jason Park flew his modified racing pod straight into the bridge of a Crix cruiser, taking out their command structure at the cost of his own life. The tide of battle began to turn when the humans revealed their final surprise. Dr. Tanaka had been working on something in the deepest levels of the station, and now she activated it. The entire station's quantum resonance array, designed for communication across interstellar distances, had been modified into a massive directed energy weapon. "Firing main array," Tanaka announced with grim satisfaction. The beam that lanced out from Nexus Station was unlike anything in conventional warfare. It wasn't just destructive, it was transformative, breaking down the molecular bonds in whatever it touched. The remaining Crix flagship, caught in the beam's path, simply ceased to exist. The battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. The surviving Crix ships, faced with the complete destruction of their task force, fled into hyperspace. But they would carry with them a new understanding of humanity. These weren't just clever primitives with advanced technology. These were beings who would sacrifice everything to protect what they loved. The message that changed everything. In the aftermath of the Battle of Nexus Station, as rescue ships arrived and the wounded were tended to, Zara found herself once again standing at the observation deck's viewport. But this time, she wasn't alone. The space around the station was filled with ships. Not just human vessels, but representatives from a dozen different species who had heard about the battle and come to offer aid. Captain Torres joined her, his arm in a sling, but his expression proud. "The casualty reports are in," he said quietly. "We lost 417 people, but we saved 46,000. Zara nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Each of those names represented someone who had chosen to stand and fight rather than run. They had died defending not just their own lives, but the principle that ordinary people could accomplish extraordinary things. "Commander," Torres continued, "we're receiving communication requests from across the galaxy. Word of what happened here is spreading." "What kind of communications?" "Alliance representatives want to meet with you." The Krix Empire has requested a formal ceasefire, and he paused, checking his tablet. The Terran Defense Fleet is sending a delegation to discuss your tactical innovations. Zara almost laughed at that. The same fleet that had abandoned her was now interested in her methods. But her attention was caught by movement outside the viewport. A small ship was approaching, not one of the rescue vessels, but something sleek and clearly alien. That's a Krix diplomatic vessel, Torres said, following her gaze. They're requesting permission to board. An hour later, Zara found herself in the station's main conference room facing a Krix diplomat named Vexthul. The alien's chitinous features were impossible to read, but his posture suggested something between respect and wariness. "Commander Winters," Vexthul began, his voice translated by the station's systems. "I bring greetings from the Krix High Command. We wish to discuss terms." "Terms?" Zara kept her voice neutral. "The Empire has decided that humanity presents unique challenges to our expansion plans. We propose a mutual non-aggression pact. The Krix will withdraw from human space, and humans will refrain from further creative defensive measures." It was a remarkable admission. For the first time in their history, the Krix Empire was offering to negotiate rather than simply conquer. But Zara sensed there was more to this than simple military calculation. "What changed your minds?" she asked. Vexthul was quiet for a long moment. Admiral Kethvar survived the battle. Before he died from his injuries, he sent a message to High Command. He said that in 40 years of conquest, he had never faced an enemy that fought with such passion. Your people didn't just fight to win, they fought for each other. They sacrificed themselves not for glory or honor, but for love. The alien diplomat stood, his movements careful and deliberate. The Empire conquers through fear and superior technology. But we cannot conquer love. We cannot defeat people who willingly die for strangers, who turn merchant ships into weapons, who face impossible odds with laughter and determination. After the diplomat left, Zara remained in the conference room, thinking about his words. A soft chime indicated an incoming message, and she was surprised to see it was from Admiral Richardson, her former fleet commander. "Commander Winters," the holographic figure began. "I want to personally apologize for what happened at Nexus Station. In our haste to preserve the fleet, we left behind our most valuable asset. Not just a decorated officer, but a leader who understood what we were truly fighting for." Richardson paused, his expression serious. "I'm hereby offering you command of the new Terran Defense Initiative. We need leaders who can think beyond conventional tactics, who understand that our greatest strength isn't our technology, it's our humanity." Zara stared at the message for a long time before responding. When she finally activated the recorder, her words were simple but profound. "Admiral, I'm honored by your offer, but I must respectfully decline. You see, I've learned something important here at Nexus Station. The real fight isn't happening in the depths of space between fleets of warships. It's happening in places like this, where ordinary people choose to stand together against the darkness." She gestured toward the viewport, where the rescue operations continued. "These people didn't abandon me when things got difficult. They stood with me, fought with me, and many of them died beside me. That's where I belong, not commanding from the bridge of a dreadnought, but standing with the people who refuse to surrender their humanity, no matter the cost." The message that emerged from Nexus Station traveled faster than any ship, spreading through subspace communications to every corner of human space and beyond. It wasn't a military communique or a diplomatic declaration. It was something far more powerful, a story. The story of humans who turned cargo haulers into weapons, who faced impossible odds with determination and dark humor, who chose to fight not because they could win, but because surrender meant abandoning their principles. It was the story of Commander Zara Winters, who had been abandoned by her fleet but found something far more valuable, a family worth fighting for. Years later, When historians wrote about the moment humanity became a true galactic power, they wouldn't point to the development of new weapons or the conquest of new worlds. They would point to the Battle of Nexus Station, where an abandoned officer and 47,000 ordinary people proved that the human spirit, once ignited, could illuminate the darkest corners of the galaxy, and they would remember her words, spoken in the aftermath of victory. "We don't fight because we're not afraid. We fight because some things are worth being afraid for."